The pistol cracked before my wallet cleared my jacket. The sound slapped the glass and steel like thunder on a blue sky day, and for one long second the entire airport forgot how to breathe. If your life ever flips in a single frame, do you feel it coming, or does it just hit you in the chest and rewrite your name? Tell me this. If it were you, would you have known which second to change? My name is Isaiah Freeman, retired Army, after 20 years more sand than sleep, more letters to families than medals on my chest. That afternoon at Dallas-Fort Worth, I wasn't a headline. I was just a man limping out of Terminal C with a cap in my hand that said, U.S. Army retired, and a knee that clicks when the weather turns, no suitcase because I travel light now, a folded coat over my forearm like something ordinary could make me invisible. The sliding doors hissed that high airport light spilled in wheels, scraped tile. The PA chimed gate changes, and two officers on the edge of the concourse locked onto me with that look you only know if you've lived under it, the kind that sorts a face into a category before the mouth even opens. Sir. The older one barked it like a warning and a dare. I turned because that's what I was taught. Never run from the people you pay to protect you. Step aside. ID. I lifted my hands, fingers spread, palms empty. I just got off Flight 217 from D.C., my ID's in my inside pocket. My voice stayed calm because I've been in rooms where panic has a body count. Don't move, he snapped, thumb flirting with the holster. The younger one came in, close eyes already narrowed around a story he hadn't bothered to confirm. I move the way you move around tripwires, slow enough to count your heartbeat. Gun, he yelled, and the sound that followed opened the floor under me. I felt heat tear through my chest, a white burst I will never find new words for, tile rushing up my cap, skittering away my body, not mine anymore. The terminal went so quiet I could hear the echo roll down the corridor and come back thinner like it lost courage on the way. Phones rose 100 tiny eyes. A child somewhere asked what was happening. A mother didn't answer. The older officer's arm stayed stuck out like an apology he couldn't speak. The younger whispered, "You shot him," like the news was new even to him. I tried to pull a breath out of the thin air and taste if it had changed. It had. Boots. That's what broke the silence. 6 pairs, heavy and disciplined, not swagger, not panic, just purpose. They cut through the crowd wearing plain clothes and faces that said Federal without saying a word. Federal defense agents, everybody back. The man in front, tall black Navy suit, not a hair off duty, showed a badge you can't buy online. Special Agent Colton Reeves, Department of Defense, Criminal Investigations. He didn't look at me, not yet. He looked at them. Step away from the victim. The older officer tried to gather his dignity like spilled change. Who the hell are you? Colton didn't blink. The people who just watched you open fire on Lieutenant Colonel Isaiah Freeman, United States Army, retired. He is an active consultant in a federal investigation. You could feel those words hit their uniforms like a gust against a tent. Instant give. They disarmed both officers so fast and clean the room remembered what competence looks like. A helicopter's low thrum rattled the windows like the sky itself decided to witness. Colton knelt, pressed hard on the wound, his hands steady where mine shook. Stay with me, Colonel. You took your time, I rasped, because pain makes me reach for the nearest joke. He gave me half a smile. You always did have terrible timing, sir. And that's when I knew. Somebody had just tried to bury a story with my body, and we were either going to drag it into the light or get dragged with it. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Rewind a day, no 3. I'd spent 3 nights in D.C. reading things I wish I could unknow. A report meant for a Pentagon liaison in Dallas. Not email, not courier hand-to-hand, because trust lives better in the space between 2 palms than in a server room. It wasn't theory, it wasn't think pieces, it was names, airports, contracts, shifts, a shadow spreadsheet of who got pulled out of line and why, a paper trail of public duty braided to private cash. Airport officers trading data with contractors, risk markers that looked suspiciously like demographics. Random checks that weren't random detentions that were called secondary screening until they became bruises, then charges like resisting, then silence. I promised I'd deliver it in person. I believed I could outrun the shortcuts people take when a truth is too expensive to carry. Yeah, that happened. In the ambulance, the siren sang the same note it sings for everybody. Guilty, innocent. No difference. Just a song that means hurry. My blood turned the blanket into evidence. Colton's jaw worked in that way it does when he's thinking 3 moves ahead and trying to keep me in the one I'm in. Stay with me, Colonel. I was tired of being a colonel that day. Call me Isaiah, in case that matters to anyone watching. He squeezed my shoulder. It mattered to him. At the hospital, the ceiling tiles were that popcorn white that always looks like quiet punishment. Machines charted my heartbeat like they were taking notes for a test I didn't study for. Before the anesthesia shoved a pillow into the back of my head, 2 men walked in with suits that fit too well, and a smell of authority that didn't. Lieutenant Colonel Freeman, the tall one, said, smooth and sharp, "Agent Troy Matthews, Defense Intelligence. This is Agent Collins. We're here on behalf of the Secretary. We need the report." Colton stepped between us like he'd rehearsed it. "That evidence stays under my jurisdiction until I hear directly from General Clean." Matthews didn't blink. "National security requires flexibility." I smiled, the kind of smile you don't use on people you want to see again. Flexibility is how truth gets stretched until it snaps agent. They left without slamming the door. Men like that don't slam doors. They schedule them. Naomi arrived after the blood stopped screaming. Lieutenant Naomi Clark. If steel could be kind, that's what she is. Uniform, crisp eyes, steady hands, gentle in a way that makes you remember warriors can heal. She set a secure tablet on the tray and looked me dead center. "It's all there," she said. "Contracts that move money from airports to a shell company out of Arlington, routing payments labeled training grants and officer wellness that fund a different kind of class, how to keep investigations from landing, communications between airport security and Sentinel Group security, and a shadow arm that calls itself Aegis because patriots love a Roman myth, teaching managers the script for optics management." She didn't have to tell me what optics means when people bleed. It means what it always means. The camera got it, so get a different camera. And then the internet did what the internet does. It yanked the story out of any one person's hand and turned it into a mirror. A 26-second clip surfaced, shaky and ugly and perfect. Me with my hands high, voice unheard, body language reading calm and careful to anyone who's ever been taught how not to die. Reaching for a wallet, not a gun. The muzzle flash like a second sun, my body folding into tile. It spread like anger, like prayer, like the way truth travels when it's been quiet too long. "Veterans bleed too," they wrote. "Justice has no rank." And on the other side, a chorus of questions shaped like doubt. Why wasn't he in uniform? Why didn't he wait to move? Why was he traveling without a bag? You know what I mean? As if our safety depends on us never needing a hand to scratch our own skin. Do you think that's fair? We were barely out of the ER when Tommy Wills cracked the dam. He'd worked airport security in Charlotte for years, ordinary paycheck, ordinary man eyes that said confession had been sitting in his mouth for a long time. He went live on a phone in a blank room and told the truth like it owed him rent. They never say black. He said they say probable, efficient, surface intuition. We knew exactly what that meant. I did it and I hate myself for it. He cried. The particular tears of someone who used authority like a shield and finally feels the weight of what it covered. The clip bounced from screen to screen faster than excuses. Then came the audio, a recording from an internal TSA manager's call. Voices casual, administrative, dangerous. "We don't have bandwidth for full sweeps, so prioritize groups that statistically show higher risks." And a laugh, a joke, and you know what that means. The old wink and nod that writes policy in the shadow and lets the daylight pretend innocence. If it were you, would you believe it now, or would you still need a body to make it real? Malik called that night. Staff Sergeant Malik Rogers. Smart enough to make computers talk, stubborn enough to keep them honest. He'd spent hours tearing through my encrypted archive because he knows my habits too well. It's not one, he said, voice low, anger held with both hands. It's 42. 42 cases that match your pattern. Flagged at the checkpoint, pulled aside, detained phones mirrored, some beaten, some dead, none prosecuted. Names, dates, officers, and money. Money, Colton repeated because he knows. Follow that and you follow motive. Malik sent over a folder labeled Field Notes BSU, Blue Shield United. Their slogans sounded like all the others. Brotherhood, shield, the truth, maintain order. I've heard those lines in languages that don't share alphabets. The meaning never changes. We're getting closer, right? Here's the twist. The kind of twist you feel in your stomach first. Malik dug deeper and found a photo in an old deployment folder from a desert I can smell if I close my eyes. There I am, younger jaw, tighter eyes that have seen too much and still believe we can be better. On either side, 2 men from my security detail in Iraq, arms slung loose the way men do when they pretend they sleep well. One of those men is Derek Kane, the officer who shot me on the floor of an American airport. He wore my trust once. I trained him to hold his fire until reality spoke, not fear. 10 years later, fear borrowed his hands and wrote its oldest story. I stared at that photo until the edges blurred. Naomi went still in that way she does when the truth drops 10 floors and lands without breaking. Colton set the photo down like it might explode. "You think this was personal?" he asked. I shook my head, felt the stitch in my chest pull. "Worse. It's a message. If they can shoot me, a man with rank with a badge in his pocket with friends who can shut down a terminal, then what do you think happens to the man who only has his own name? Do you think that's fair?" Lucas Ward reached out like a man grabbing the last rung. Mid-40s airport security badge hands that couldn't stop trembling. We met him at a rest stop because safe places get picked clean pretty fast when the stakes shift. He said he joined Blue Shield because it promised to keep good cops good. Then one day the emails started sounding like assignments, profiles shared through airport systems, targets, chosen records scrubbed when the optics got bad. "Who's giving these orders?" Naomi asked, voice flat, so his answer wouldn't try to please it. "A contractor," he said. "Aegis. Sentinel. They change the name, but the money never changes hands. They fund the training, the travel, the legal defense, and they have a friend on the Homeland Security Committee. A friend. It's always a friend." Headlights cut across us hard and fast, doors flew open. Rifles barked night into pieces. Colton shoved Lucas down behind the bumper. Naomi squeezed 2 controlled bursts that taught the dark a lesson. I hugged the pavement and tried to keep my stitches from opening the whole day again. It ended as quickly as it started because cowards don't stick around when people shoot back. The next morning, Lucas was dead in a motel on I-35. Suicide. Report filed before coffee. Bullets don't miss by accident, and neither do cover-ups. Pattern interrupt. Truth doesn't knock, it breaks glass. They dragged me into a Senate hearing like a polite theater where the ending's written. Senator Halverson chaired it, all polished manners and a flag pin you could see from space. "Colonel Freeman," he smiled, "we're here for facts, not emotion." I said, "Facts took a bullet today, Senator. They'll be late." Cameras clicked, the room breathed together, a choir with no hymn. "Do you admit that your independent investigation endangered officers' lives?" he asked, voice like a principal's office. "No," I said, letting the pause get heavy. "What endangers officers is a system that rewards silence and punishes conscience." He didn't like that weight. "You're accusing thousands of honorable men and women. I'm accusing training that turns bias into protocol and pays bonuses for the outcomes that bias guarantees." A reporter in the back, Leah Harris, sharp as a winter morning, stood up and asked why Blue Shield United donated $85,000 to Halverson's last campaign. He banged the gavel, loud as just fear with a stick. General Wilcox, a Marine who took off his pack and put on a suit without losing his spine, put us in a briefing room that looked like it ate sleep for breakfast. "I'm not investigating one bullet," he said. "I'm checking the weather." Naomi put a map on the wall, red dots blooming across the country like a rash no one wanted to name. 301 incidents at airports in 10 years. Malik overlaid the contracts. 3 private firms, 1 lobbying group with a name that wraps itself in the flag money flows, that carve grooves through cities and leave citizens in them. Then the email, optics first, better overreach than underact. Remember, it's not what happened, it's what they see. Signed, Russell Gentry. I'd shaken his hand once at a liaison summit. It had been dry and practiced, the kind politicians learned in mirrors. When the press conference came, I stood in the back because I wanted to hear my name said like it wasn't an argument. Secretary of Defense Linda Hartwell took the podium, 2 generals on one side, a DOJ official on the other, chewing guilt like gum. After an extensive joint investigation, she said, "We're announcing the arrest of 12 individuals for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of authority. TSA officials, security executives, airport supervisors. Additionally, officers Derek Kane and Ryan Madsen are charged with attempted murder and civil rights violations related to the shooting of retired Army Colonel Isaiah Freeman." She said my name, and it didn't feel like a prayer anymore, it felt like a record. You'd think that would fix it, that the lights and charges and morning shows would pack the wound and send us back to work. But justice doesn't live in microphones. It lives in what people do when the lights go down. The Freeman inquiry opened. Not my trial, the system's. We filled a chamber with voices nobody wanted to hear last year. Officers who quit because they couldn't stand the mirror. mothers who buried a child and kept the funeral program in a kitchen drawer that shouldn't have to hold that kind of paper. Travelers who learned what secondary screening really means when you look like me, a handful of men who wore badges and remorse at the same time. Naomi walked the room through the numbers like a map to a minefield. When we ask people to risk their lives abroad, we can't promise them honor there and humiliation here. Malik said the quiet thing polite. When a soldier dies, we do an after-action review. When a citizen is beaten at a checkpoint on our soil, we shrug and say policy will handle it. Why is that? When they called me, I carried more than my story. I brought letters. Marcus from the 82nd Airborne, who got pulled out of line at LAX in full dress and called a suspect, with a salute still drying on his fingers. A Marine in Phoenix told to take off his uniform shirt because security needed to see if it was hiding something. A woman in Atlanta whose headscarf got touched like it belonged to the government. I'm not here for sympathy, I said. I'm here because a wallet is not a weapon. A skin tone is not a risk marker, and a security line is not a place where dignity goes to die. I'm here because you pay these people with my money too, and I want a receipt. The room didn't clap. It did one better. It shut up and listened. The bill wasn't fancy. It didn't wear a cape. It did what too many people said was too much to ask. Section 1. Every security interaction gets recorded, and if a citizen files a complaint, the footage becomes reviewable in 72 hours because Sunlight keeps better records than committees. Section 2. Demographic and racial profiling are banned outright. No more coded markers, no more behavioral risk as a stand-in for faces you've been taught to fear. Section 3. An independent oversight board made of civilians and veterans with teeth in its mouth and a schedule that doesn't break for lunch every time someone important calls. They called it the Freeman Act. They didn't ask if I wanted my name on it. Maybe they thought it would make me smile. The vote went up, 325 to 105, and it didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief, like the kind you get after a surgeon tells you they got all of it, and you still don't know if you believe them. 2 days later, I shook the president's hand at a desk big enough to hide 100 broken promises. He handed me the pen, smiled for the cameras, and told me I'd reminded the country what we stand for. Remind them again tomorrow, I said they'll forget by Monday. He laughed, everybody laughed, and still. Truth isn't a punchline, it's a chore list. 6 months pass and the scars don't itch anymore. Dallas looks the same and different. Sunlight on glass, PA chimes, security lines coiled like anxious snakes. Whispers softer now because names learned how to be louder. I put on my dress uniform for one reason. Not for honor, not for optics, but because sometimes history needs something physical to ride in on. I came to see Elijah off, a kid from South Dallas who saw me hit the tile that day and decided he wanted to talk about human rights in rooms where people listen for a living. He held his backpack straps like a parachute he wasn't sure he needed. Colonel Freeman, he said, voice between boy and man. Just Isaiah today, I told him, and we stood in that haunted place together until it felt less haunted. When I saw you bleeding, he said, I thought if they can shoot him, what chance do I have? I nodded because the only sin greater than asking that question is never asking it. That was the right question, I told him. The wrong answer is silence. I gave him a photo, me in that 26-second clip, hands up, caught before the flash. And on the back I wrote, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs someone to carry it forward. I wish that was the last chapter. It isn't. Laws pass, but habits don't retire without a fight. Some officers quit because they weren't hired to be machines and someone kept trying to upgrade their humanity out of them. Some chiefs started every meeting with remember DFW like a psalm. Repetition can be prayer and warning both. A bunch of airports built review boards that matter, and a few built boards that looked like they matter. Profiling learned new words because bad ideas don't die, they adapt. Now it's behavior gate linger time by a gate, earthy smells in a bag surface intuition. Managers learn to say everything except the one word that makes them look in the mirror. People sent me messages. A Marine in uniform stopped 3 times on his way to a funeral. A mother whose teen was asked to unlock his phone because you look nervous. A businessman told to step aside because his ticket was one way and his face was familiar from somebody else's nightmare. Do you think that's fair? I visited Derek in custody, not because I like endings tied with bows, but because memory is heavy and I needed to set a piece of it down. He looked older than his age-orange fabric and eyes that didn't know where to land. I didn't know, he said, which is what people tell themselves when a system uses their hands. You didn't need to know, I said. You needed to see me as a man. He cried. I didn't. Forgiveness is a door I'll open one day, but I'm not in the house yet. I sit on my porch some nights and write letters to names I don't know. Marcus from the 82nd, who wrote to tell me he was pulled aside in LAX in full uniform and treated like a suspect with a salute still in his bones. A woman named Tiana, who watched her father take off his shoes 3 times in Newark because the machine kept reading his prosthetic as a threat and the agent kept reading his face as confirmation. A pilot who sent me a photo of his badge next to a screenshot of my hearing and said about damn time. Naomi drops by unannounced with files under her arm. Malik calls with arguments about subclauses because good laws are built like bridges, out of math and sweat and a willingness to stand in the river. People ask me if one gunshot changed a system. No, a gunshot doesn't change anything. It only makes people finally hear what the silence has been screaming for years. What changes a system is a stubborn choir, people who get loud and stay loud when the cameras pack up officers who choose conscience over culture managers who burn memos instead of evidence lawmakers who wake up at 3 a.m. and realize a bill is a promise with a price tag. You know what I mean. So let me ask you straight. If it were you in Terminal C, hands up wallet in your jacket breath, caught like a trapped animal, what would you have done? Freeze, run, argue, comply. What would you expect from the people with the badges? Perfection, patience, accountability. If your son or brother or father looked like me, what rules would you teach him to survive his day? And if he ended up bleeding on a public floor while strangers filmed, would you accept a memo that said optics first? Do you think that's fair? I can tell you this much. Justice isn't the sound of gavels on mahogany. It's the quiet that settles when people finally feel safe. It's the way a kid like Elijah walks through an airport with his hands in his pockets and doesn't think about where his wallet is. It's a TSA agent who says sir with the kind of respect that doesn't check your name against a list before it mouths the word. It's a chief who announces we don't do that here and means it past Tuesday. It's a law that got teeth not because Congress grew a spine overnight, but because you grew tired enough and brave enough to push them. I'm not asking you to agree with me on every detail. I'm asking you not to get comfortable. Share this if you think oversight should be the default, not the exception. Argue with me if you need to. In the comments right now, tell me where you think I'm wrong and why. Tell me your city and what it feels like to go through security there. Tell me the moment a badge saved you or failed you. Tell me how you'd fix a system that pays bonuses for arrests and then calls that safety. If you wear the uniform and you're tired of being asked to be a machine, tell me how you fight it and what you need to keep fighting it. If you're a veteran who thought your medals would be a shield, tell me where they failed so we can hammer the next one out of something stronger. Stick around, because the next chapter isn't mine to narrate alone, it's ours to write. And what you do with it could blow someone's mind or save someone's life, maybe both. Drop your city in the comments so your voice joins the record. Hit subscribe if you want more truth told plain, not polished for ratings, not wrapped in platitudes. Just a man who almost died for a wallet and decided he was done being polite about it. I'm Isaiah. I'm still here. I'm listening.